like to take this opportunity to welcome each and every one of you who made a special effort to be here, especially Rabbi Rosenbaum, who we know your time is limited. The family is deeply grateful for giving of your time. It's really, truly appreciated. I'd also like to thank Rabbi Benzi Sudak for allowing us to use his Chabad house for the launch of this particular sefer, Kol Dovid. I think it's appropriate at a time like this to say the bracha, Baruch Shehechayonu, V'kiyimonu v'giyonu lizman hazeh. It's appropriate to make this bracha, first and foremost, because in spite of all the challenges, and there have been many, finally a sefer which, according to everybody who has had anything to do with this particular sefer, has brought to reality a book which is full of chidushim, full of new ideas, remozim, and bringing to the Torah world something which until now had been somewhat hidden. That in itself, when we are in a situation where Torah is brought to light, deserves each and every one of us to make the bracha shehechayonu. But I want to share with you another reason as to why we should make shehechayonu. Today is Tes Teves, and not long ago, in fact, Hey Teves, in Chabad circles, is a very special day. It's a Yom Tov. And the reason why it is a Yom Tov is because certain individuals tried, specifically through Seforim and Kisvei Yad, to attack the Nisim of Chabad, and particular our Rebbe. It was the case of Didon Notzach, and it had to go, sadly, to very high levels of legal challenges. But what actually happened, besides the fact that it has become a day of simcha and celebration, was the fact that in relation to Hey Teves, which, as I said, was connected with Sforim, the Rebbe spoke many different sichos. And in one of the sichos, the Rebbe actually explains what actually happens when a certain person, a tzaddik, writes a sefer. So on the one hand, we can say Shehechayonu because of the chidushim, because of all the new things which have been revealed to us. That in itself demands that we should be able to celebrate it, to be able to learn from it, to be able to be inspired by it. But the Rebbe spoke in connection with the Frierdiker Rebbe, and for us, of course, it is appropriate in our situation to understand that when a tzaddik writes a sefer, it's not only the chidushim which come alive, but that the tzaddik himself becomes alive. And for most of us, probably all of us who are here today, we never knew our Zayda. We never physically knew him. But when a sefer comes out, as the Rebbe explained, the spiritual life of that tzaddik also comes alive. For 80 years, over 80 years, the sefer, we knew about it, we didn't know about it, we never knew how amazing it really was. But now all of a sudden we reached a particular era. And this is Hashgacha Pratis. The Eibishter wanted us to wait over 80 years until we found people, and those people who have been involved so beautifully until now. The Eibishter sent us that this is the time, this is the moment when we're going to have the Gilui. Not only the Gilui of the Chidushim, but the Gilui of his Neshama. And that deserves us to make Shehechayonu, because in our lives we now are able to identify with this tzaddik who lived and who therefore was the focus of the mishpacha, the beautiful mishpacha which we have, the Schreiber mishpacha, the Kornbluth mishpacha, the Kams mishpacha, and all the Einiklach and Ur Einiklach, and all the people who have been able to benefit from his chidushim and who the person is. And I just wish to finish off by saying, first of all, a schus to everybody. I don't want to mention names, because one of the rules that Rabbonim know, if you start mentioning names, ochen vei, if you leave anybody out. But all those people who were personally involved, whether it was financial, or whether it was behind the scenes encouraging, or it was being magir the sefer, every person who had ishtatus, They should give them and bench them. That they should have tremendous amount of Yiddish Chassidish nachas from their children. They should have good gesund, and they should be able to appreciate all that's going to happen to them with good gesund and with good health, with parnasa b'hachava. And ultimately, as indeed this was the kavanah about being megala a sefer, that in that schus, we as a mishpacha, as a community, and please, hopefully after this event, we all going to be able to mefarsem and try and spread out the beautiful svarim which our Zayda was able to bring into the world, and we were able to bring to the fus, to printing, that ultimately this should be another hagdama, the gilu of more Torah, that we should have is galus of Mashiach Tzidkenu, and may that happen speedily in our days. So now I would like to call upon my sister-in-law, Tanya Canvasser, who those of you, or everybody knows, has been so instrumental living in Yerushalayim to bring us to this particular stage. And I want to offer you our bracha, Tanya, that please God, you should only have nachas and you should have gesund and all the things that you want, especially from Kayla Rivka, who's also here. Exactly, you made a special point to be with us, Kayla Rivka. You are the representative. So that is really amazing. So you're going to give us another short introduction, and hopefully we're going to then hear from Rabbi Rosenbaum. So thank you so much.
So, yeah, I can just say, Shachiyanu v'Higiyanu, Kiyimanu v'Higiyanu Lazman Hazeh. It's really, really special opportunity and a special schus that we have, that we've come to put out the first new sefer of the Kol Dovid. I also just want to mention, sorry that we can't have here my mother and Auntie Sarah in person, but Baruch Hashem, we have the Zoom and a video, so anybody who isn't able to join, Mitzvah Hashem, they should be able to follow. So I just want to give an introduction to Rabbi Rosenbaum, but just how this all started. And this was a few years ago that I was speaking with my mother, and from there we had a phone conversation with Philip, and from there we had another conversation with Rabbi Tiefenbrum, and we got together and had a meeting about how can we now help the continuation of there's a lot more material that hasn't come out in the Kol Dovid, and Philip, Zichrono Levracha, was dedicating his life to working on it, drawing out for everyone's simchas, but on his own, trying to work through and get through to bring it to light. And we wanted to come and support and help him to do that. And we decided we would take Rabbi Tiefenbrum to do the transcribing, and Philip would continue to do the editing, and slowly we get there. And so we started. We had this meeting in my mother's house, and just want to say that when everyone left, my mother closed the door, I noticed that she was crying, and she doesn't usually. And I said, "Mummy, what's happening?" She said, "I feel that I'm continuing the work of my mother, who saved the manuscripts and got them out after our grandfather was taken, and that I'm now continuing to have these things to bring them to be published." So we started the work with Rabbi Tiefenbrum, and for a couple of years we were up to what happened. What actually, in case anybody doesn't know, and there is a picture here of a pile of notebooks. There were basically 155 notebooks that the Kol Dovid left of one series, and then there were a few more of another series. But the 155, here they are. Now they don't look like much, but they don't even look like they're 155, but they are packed. So what happened is the first 14, the Kol Dovid himself recopied by hand to be published. And these were published in 1960 on the occasion of David Schreiber's Bar Mitzvah by Chaim Schreiber, I think with the encouragement of Srulik Weinstock. And that is the Kol Dovid that we all know, the first Kol Dovid. 17 years later, the Sefer Kol Dovid Tinyono was published, and it's a completely different type of Sefer. The first Kol Dovid is, according to the Torah on the Parsha, the Chidushim of the Kol Dovid, Pasuk by Pasuk, Parsha by Parsha, all the way through from Bereshis until the end. But it's only over the first 14 notebooks, which were actually written all during the early years. He started writing when he was about 17, and he continued until before he was taken, age 64, so almost 50 years of constant writing in these notebooks. And Dovi just said to me, he made a calculation about how much is in there, like thousands and thousands. We don't even, and we're slowly getting to see more. So I think at one point I asked Rabbi Tiefenbrun while he was working, how long do you think it will take for you to finish, He said, maybe 8 years, he said to me, and I don't think it registered. But we managed, he started from number 27, and I think till 59 is what we managed, with Philip following through. And at the same time, we went to look for a publisher. Who is going to help us publish this? And he sent Yitzi to the Oisehodo. He had a meeting with somebody who gave us whatever it was, a suggestion, and we were looking until the Hashgacha Pratis came, that a friend of mine who had recently remarried said to me, my husband works for Ois V'Hodo, he's an editor in Ois V'Hodo. And I said, please, can I have his number? And that is how I got to Rabbi Rosenbaum. We took him the work and we showed him and asked him if he thought that he could work on this, and he said he could. And this was the time just before Philip Zichrono Levracha was nifta, but he managed to have a couple of good conversations with Rabbi Rosenbaum, which I hope he maybe will share with us some of what was in those conversations. And by the time Yitzi said to me that his father said to him, I feel I'm leaving this in good hands with Rabbi Rosenbaum. And so that's, and I just want to say the other story, which I heard recently yesterday from Yitzi. We were back and forth as to when actually the Sefer would be printed, and I was trying to book to come to be with my mother for Hanukkah, and I still wanted to be able to do, and I didn't know, and I actually ended up booked without knowing if the Sefer would be ready. And Baruch Hashem, it was. I gave enough time. But Yitzi said to me that he came to Rabbi Rosenbaum earlier last week, and he wanted to know if the Sefer would be ready, if he could take it to the Tzion for the Yortzeit. Philip's Yortzeit was on Tuesday, and it wasn't yet ready. But when he came on Friday morning to pick up the Sefer, Rabbi Rosenbaum said, so what day was the Yortzeit? He said it was on the Tuesday. He said that was the day that the Sefer was printed. The pages of the Sefer of the Kol Dovid was printed. That the printing process is a process. It's printed, then it needs to be folded, then it needs to be sewn, then it needs to be glued, then the cover needs to be put on. But the day that the Sefer was printed was the Yortzeit of Philip Zichrono Levracha. So, whatever, there's been a lot of, hashgacha and siyata d'shmaya in having come to this, and it's a whole process. And before I introduce Rabbi Ram, I'm going to say one more thing, and that is, we were taken by surprise when we got into the work of how much material there was. It was like we didn't expect, it's like a yum. So if 14 was the first, and then you've got 155, so that's more than 10 times as much. But even understanding how much that is, we are constantly, as we're going, realizing this is a huge, huge project. And we are very grateful to have made the start, to have set up, to have done the first Sefer, to have got the whole mahalach of how to do the first Sefer. And in Mitzvah Hashem, we are wanting that Mitzvah Hashem, the family support, that we should be able to continue to be able to put out all the rest of the Sforim, but we're going to need a lot of support from everybody in order to continue this project. But now we're going to hear how the work. Thank you, Rabbi Rosenbaum.
Those that escorted the project from the beginning know a bit, or a bit more than a bit, of what was really involved, bringing a Sefer like Kol Dovid to be a final product of a Sefer Kol Dovid. I want to share with you some thoughts. I just mentioned before, Rav Shraga Feivel had a few discussions with me. You call him Philip, yeah? Okay. Rav Shraga Feivel had a few discussions with me about how the Sefer should be presented, how it should be, what should be done, what should not be done, how it should be done. We discussed it several times. We had a few very, very good discussions how he feels the Sefer should be, and I was very happy that we were on the same page. We understood each other. He had a very he wanted the Sefer should be the way the Kol Dovid wants the Sefer to be. It wasn't. He had no personal intentions in how I would like it the Sefer should be. He was constantly thinking how the Mechaber would like that the Sefer should really be. And the last discussion I had with him was really to touch my heart. He called me one day and he told me that he's not well and he doesn't know how long he's going to be around. And he asked me, he said if he has a very good feeling that the Sefer is in good hands, and he requested I should be devoted and I should do the job the way it should be, the way whatever we discussed. I feel like I'm a shliach of Shlag Feivel. I definitely feel that I'm a shliach of the Mechaba. Like was mentioned before, it says tzaddikim said that nefesh hatzadik otuv b'diburoi, in a chibur which a tzaddik wrote, his neshama is in the sefer. Soon speak about it, but the sefer has the neshama of the tzaddik in it, and by the sefer being published and making it available for people to learn, it's a very big nachas ruach for the tzaddik that in Gan Eden, that the sefer is being presented and the sefer is being able to understand the sefer. The Kol Dovid had he was a genius. It's besides it is cheshbonis that he was to take out of one pasuk a gematria of 6,000, 7,000, and this is the gematria of the Shloishes Ramidas Shel Rachmim and all the Malachim and the Shemes Akdoshim. We're talking about thousands. With a calculator, a person can get kind of confused with such big numbers. And he had unbelievable, marvelous way of thinking and expressing himself. And with so clear, whatever he wrote was so accurate. I mentioned to the family that went through checking. In the beginning, we didn't have a calculator. How was I able to figure it out? Must have made some mistakes here and there. It's a very normal thing. Let's see. Let's see in percentage-wise. How many times was he off? How many times did he make a mistake? And it was. We don't trust anything. There's Baruch Hashem, a very talented staff working on it. I'm not the only one. There's a group of Talmidei Chachamim which are big in Kabbalah, in Nigla, and in Nista. They never found a mistake in tens of thousands. No, I'm not exaggerating. Tens of thousands of gematriyos. Not one mistake was found. One time there was a mistake, which we thought it was a mistake, until we all figured out that the Mechaba was right and we're making the mistake. Of the way of how to figure it out, he knew it's unbelievable. And what does that come to say? Of course he was a genius, true. But more than his kishrin, that he was so talented, much more than that, is the siyata d'shmaya he had when he wrote the Sefer. It was obvious. It's not possible that a boss of Adam should write so clear, so the way he wrote, and so accurate, and his maram b'koimis. He never missed, when he wrote something down, if he wasn't 100% sure, he wrote, I think it's there. And usually it was there, the place where he thought it was there. But whenever he wrote a maram mokim, accurate, exactly, he knew exactly where it says, and he remembers when the references he brings down. He could write in booklet number 136 that I wrote in booklet 44 and on this page, and in booklet 79 on that page. And you look, if you look for it, it's exactly the way everything so exact and so organized and so with such a marvelous seder, the way everything was brought out. The secret is siyata d'shmaya. That's the secret. It's Kishrin, of course, he's a genius, he was talented, very talented. The Sefer is much more than Kishrin, much, much more. And the secret is, he had Siyata Dishmaya, the Bron Shlom was helping him write that Sefer. I feel those which have a shaykhis, those that want to have a shaykhis with such a big tzaddik, and he was a tzaddik nister. I had an argument with the family. If we're allowed to write about a tzaddik nister, that he was a tzaddik nister, because you're making him that he's not a nister anymore. He's a nister. He wanted to be tzanua, quiet, nobody should look at him, nobody should know who he is. His neighbors didn't know who he is, his family didn't know who he is. Nobody really appreciated him. He was a very quiet person. Well, why are we going and publicizing a person which is wanted to be so quiet and so tzanua? But that's not true. That's an example how we're supposed to learn how to be so humble and quiet. That's what we're supposed to be learning from. A tzaddik nister, a tzaddik which was so devoted, he was mafke his life. He went through hardships in his life. He went through chayet sar tichye. Yeah, it was mekayim chayet sar tichye. He was mafke his life. He gave everything away. He devoted his life for Vayning Chedusha Torah. That's what he did all his life. I couldn't see his Seder Hayom, but I can't imagine how we had time for any Inyonei Olam Hazeh besides for being devoted to Vayning Chedusha Torah. I can't imagine. It's almost not possible. The quantity of how much he wrote in a day. You see, everything is with dates. You see how much he wrote in order for him to write. How many hours did he think about so many deep thoughts, and afterwards expressing them and so clearly. It's marvelous to think about it. How the schia you had to have such a special grandfather, and he's in Gan Eden and looking down and watching and waiting that we should be moitze el hapoel. We should continue and bring out what he did for all his life. He devoted his life 50 years of writing, and he's waiting. Those Chiddushei Torah were waiting almost 100 years that somebody should really take them into hand and bring them to the Klal Yisrael. The Klal Yisrael should be able to learn his Chiddushim. It's a very interesting Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi Masechtes Brochos says that Rabbi Yochanan once heard his Talmud saying Dvar Torah, and he had a kpeda. He said, "Why isn't my Talmud saying over in my name? It's a Dvar Torah which he heard from me. Why isn't he saying it b'shem Omrei?" So the Talmud asked the Rebbe, Rabbi Yochanan, "What's the difference? He's saying it something which is true. What's the difference in the name of who he's saying it?" So he answered that we see that Dovid HaMelech had the same request. Dovid HaMelech, we had a request that people should say over things in his name. It says in Pasuk in Tehillim, "Agura ba'yolecha olamim." I will live in your tent forever. Rabbi Yochanan explained that his request was a person can't live forever. What does it mean, olamim? So olamim means two worlds. I'm going to live on this world in the tent in Oyel Yankiv, in the place in the Bismedrish, and when I'm going to be, after I'm going to go away from this world, and I'm going to be in Oyel Ma'emes, Agura ba'olecha. If my memory is going to be said in my name, that's when I'm going to have my life. That's when I'm going to have my chiyus. Rashi explains, I'm sorry, I'm just a short Dvar Torah. Rashi explains, the Gemara says in Bavli, that when a memra said in the name of a tzaddik, Sifsoisav doivavois, Loshen Yerushalmi, Sifsoisav roichashois, his lips say along, somebody saying a memra in my name, he was nifta. He was nifta years ago. His lips are saying along the chidush with somebody saying in his name. So Rashi explains in B'choros, Rashi explains what kind of pleasure is Soifs of Doivavois, is the lips are saying along the Chiddush. What is that all about? So Rashi says that the Nifta has a feeling like as if he's alive. He has a feeling that as if he's alive. It's very hard to understand what a nifta, after a person goes away from Olam Hazeh, and he's betzeil, tachas kanfei hashchina, he's so ruchni, he's so elevated. Olam Hazeh is meaningless to him. He has no, whole Olam Hazeh has no value to him. What kind of pleasure is that his lips are moving? So his lips are moving, they're not moving. What's the difference? And besides, after a person goes away from this world, years later, there's lips, there's flesh and blood. There's nothing left of a person. So what kind of noise if Soif of Dovid voice? So I saw a beautiful pshat in Yefei Mare. The pshat, there's a sefer on Yerushalmi from Rab Shmuel Ashkenazi, one of the Kadmonim. He writes beautiful pshat. He explains, Sifsois of Doivabois is not a gashmistic aspect. We're not talking about his lips are going to be moving. The tzaddik in Gan Eden, when he hears somebody saying over a member in his name, it's a tainug ruchni. It's not a gashmistic thing. It's a ruchnistic pleasure. The tzaddik has pleasure in Gan Eden. He's tachas kanfei hashchina, and somebody saying over a member in his name, he feels a very special hiskarvis to Rabbeinu Shloim when somebody is saying over a member in his name. We're talking about a very deep, special hanor, ruchnistic hanor, which the Mechaber has when somebody is saying over in his name. How many people are saying over Chidushim from the Kol Dovid? Sorry to ask. Sorry. The Sefer, which was printed in Tovshin Chof, 1960, whatever, We're talking about years ago. People that have Oitzar HaChochma have the Sefer, who looks into the Sefer. It's not a Sefer which is... even what is printed in Oitzar HaChochma, which was printed at that time, for that time, it was pretty good. Today's generation need something much, much more advanced. When the generation, everybody wants to be advanced, and everybody has whatever everybody has at home is advanced. You can't use the same tools which we used 50, 60 years ago. It just doesn't go today. The Sefer Kol Dovid, Baruch Hashem, B'siyata Dishmaya, which was printed, is very, very, it's Gishmak. Gishmak. Whoever opens the Sefer and has a little understanding, a little feeling to what the Mechaber wrote, is flowing, is interested, it's pulse. You want to read more, you want to learn more, and beautiful concepts and beautiful ideas and beautiful thoughts. And it's a very big schus and a very big ilui neshama for the tzaddik when the Sefer will, Be'ez Hashem, be printed, not only the first volume, but there's a continuation, ala Torah, and on Tilim, and on Siddur, and on Chidushim, and there's Chaloimis, and there's Sugis Hashas. There's not one part of Torah which he didn't touch. He touched everything. And with everything so clear and so mesuda, and the Eibusher should help. We should have the Siyata D'Shmaya. You should have the Siyata D'Shmaya, and I should have the Siyata D'Shmaya. We should all have the Siyata D'Shmaya to bring out a final product the way the Mechaber really wanted that the Sefer should be b'shleimus. I just want to add a short story. There was the Nesiv Shalom, the Slonim Rebbe. He was, at the time, he was Rosh Hashiva in Chabad in Tel Aviv, and he was very young. He was a young man, and at that time, people didn't have panosa, and he had panosa. He was Rosh Hashiva. He was very young. But he was Rosh Hashiva in Chabad. And Shnas Tovshin Beis, he heard that the Slonim Rebbe was killed in World War II. He heard that the Slonim Rebbe was killed in World War II, and not only the Slonim Rebbe was killed, but the whole Kehillah in Europe, all the Shtetlach, which in that whole area, everybody was wiped out. There was nothing left from all this. Not only Slonim Kehillah, but Slonim Kehillah, and everything was wiped out. And he was very broken, very broken. He had a deep connection with the Slonim Rebbe, and with his family, with his parents, his siblings. Everybody was killed. Nothing was left from the whole family. And he was sitting with himself thinking, what can he do? What does the Rebbeinu Shalom want from me? So he came up with a conclusion, and he said, I can't save the Gufim. The Gufim, the Nazis killed. But I could save the Ruach. I could save the Ruach. That's something which I could do. And he let know whoever was responsible in the yeshiva, in Chabad, he let them know, Rabbi Isai, I have a mission. I'm left for my whole family. I'm the only one left. For my whole Chassidus, I can count on one hand all the Chassidim which were left. I have a mission. I have to save the Ruach. They looked at him as if you're crazy. What, you have a job, you're Rosh Hashiva, a young person, a Rosh Hashiva, what could be better? Because my mission is to save the Ruach. And he dropped his job, he moved to Yerushalayim, he opened the Slonim Yeshiva, he opened the Slonim Chassidus. Everybody knows today in the whole world, wide world knows of the Sefer and the Siv Shalom. That was all Mesiras Nefesh of saving Ruach. Saving the Ruach of Slonim, saving the Ruach of the Rebbe. Family, dear family members, we cannot save the Kol Dovid. Kol Dovid was killed al Kiddush Hashem, but his Ruach can be saved. Like was mentioned before, when the Sefer is being printed, it's the Nefesh of the Machaba is coming down. It's a Pchina of Tchias HaMeisim. Tchias HaMeisim, we can make Tchias HaMeisim. That's something which is going to be before Bias HaMashiach will be Zocher to Tchias HaMeisim. But just like the Yeshua of Klal Yisrael, the Gemara says, Yeshua son shel Yisrael kime. Just like when the sun rises in the morning, if the sun would come out in one strong beam, people chas v'sholom would lose their sight. Chas v'sholom, people can come blind if all of a sudden sunlight would be very strong. So Rebbeinu Shalom with Rachmanis brings that the sun rises, and it takes some time till the sun becomes stronger and stronger, till b'chatzos hayoyim the sun is strong. That's the way Yeshua son shel Yisrael kime. The Yeshua matzmiach keren Yeshua. Maral explains, just like the tree grows, you put in a seed, tomorrow you wake up and you see a tree. No, it's a long process. It's a tzmicha. The Yeshua is also going to be matzmiach keren Yeshua. It's going to grow. We see Klal Yisrael. It's marvelous, unbelievable what's happening in today's generation. With all the hard things which are going on in today's generation, we see, look around in Eretz Yisrael, what's going on. What was 70 years ago in Eretz Yisrael, and what's today in Eretz Yisrael? How many thousands and thousands of Talmidei Chachomim and Yidden Koiling Geleit and Yiddish Kinder learning Torah and families, and unbelievable what's happening. And it's not only in quantity, in quality, what's happening. Today, if I have to have a staff to work on Kol Dovid, it's much easier to get a staff today than to get 10 years ago. There are so many people which are learning Amkes HaTorah, Chassidus and Iyun and Kabbalah and everything. And people are searching, people want more and more. A Sefer like Kol Dovid is so interesting, it's so unique. There's no Sefer in the whole Svarim Shafa. There's not one Sefer which is a comparison to the Sefer of Kol Dovid. No, it doesn't exist. That style of Sefer, it does not exist. The compromise of Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod, how everything is combined and everything is integrated and one is showing on the other, and not with one Remez or two Remezim or 10 Remezim. I just mentioned before to the family, there's one pasuk in Vaychi which she has 99 Remezim on one pasuk for one thought. 99. It's unbelievable. He wasn't mistapik b'mu'et. He wasn't satisfied when he has already 2-3 good oichoches, good strong yisoidus. It's covered. No such thing. And more, and from a different angle, and from this way, and this way of thinking of a gematria. I brought down in the beginning of the Sefer, family members mentioned that how we figured out gematrios. Gematria, everybody knows. Gematria, 2 and 2 is 4, 6 and 2 is 8. Yeah, Gematria. No, he was a machadish how to figure out gematrias. That's also part of his chidushim. How to figure out gematrias. He has 10 or 12 or 14, 15, I didn't count them. Remember, I wrote them down, I didn't count them, but different ways how to figure out gematrias. If it's Rosh Tevis, Sofer Tevis, Emtsoi Tevis, and or how many times is there an Aleph in the Pasuk, and how many times there's unbelievable how he Mayan on his gabe, more and more and more. It brings cheshkes haTorah. It brings so much. It gives a person so much, such a breitkeit, such an open mind, and it's how to learn and how to think about something, and it's something very, very unique. There's no sefer which is bedoimen, no sefer which has all different types of pshat, remez, drush, and sod, and have everything combined and on such a level. It's something very, very unique. It doesn't exist. He has one sefer which he follows a little, which is Tiferes Yisrael, which is a little bedoimer, the Talmud of the Baal Shem, which is, he mentions him, he brings him many times in the sefer. Also, it's a me'en, a little part of it, which you see in Tiferes Yisrael, such a style. But the way he did it, on having on every single pasuk, and with depth, with broadness, and it's incredible, amazing. And the Eibishter should help. We should all have the schiyah together, with good health, and with siyata d'shmaya, and with the whatever we need in order to do our tafkid b'shleimis. We should be zoiche that we should be able to print all the svarim. There's a big I don't know if it's the time to explain exactly the process. I don't know if yeah, okay. Let me just the Sefer now, the first volume came out on half of Sefer Bereshis. There's another volume which is as big as this one. This is 750 pages. There's another 750 pages on the second half of Bereshis, which is from after Parshas Tolos until after Vaychi, which is final, and it was given over to Imud, which is being paginated. It's ready to be paginated and ready to be printed. Besides that second volume, we have another 2 volumes on Sefer Shmois, which are very deep in the process, in editing. Part of it is edited and already checked, and it was already went through Bikoret. It was inspection, yeah. And many parshas are complete. Some parshas are still in the process. We're talking about a process of within 2 to 3 months. We have another 3 volumes that could be printed. This is, I'm telling you, I gave out many sforim for Izvahoda. I gave out over 120 sforim for Izvahoda, only for Izvahoda. I never saw such siyata d'shmaya in a sefer like I'm seeing in Kol Dovid. I never saw such a thing. Any sefer which was coming out from Izvahoda is a long process. After it's edited, it goes to inspection. There's a mevaka toichen, and after it goes through mevaka toichen, it goes through corrections. Then it goes to a second mevaka toichen to make sure that everything is the way it should be. Then it goes through a mevaka, a style bikoret, to make sure that everything is written on the same style, and the geishim are the right places, and the maramakoim is on the right places, and it's a long process. Until afterwards, after everything, it goes, it's paginated. After it's paginated, it goes to a mevaker imud to make sure it's paginated correctly and everything's on the right place and things didn't move around, and it's an inspection. V'chulu, v'chulu, v'chulu. It's a long process. I didn't dream that a sefer, when the family approached me and asked me, how long do I think it's going to take to give out a sefer? So I think, according to my experience, it's I would say about a volume a year. It's fast. volume. So, wow, volume, no, that's too slow. I'm not a magician. I know the process. I know how long it takes. A volume a year is a normal speed, normal. Rabbi say, we're up to now 2 years. I wouldn't say 2 years, because the first year we were just taking 170 machbarot, notebooks. And the first thing, everything had to be typed, computerized. After everything was computerized, I had to go through an inspection to make sure that there are no mistakes. And with Kisvei Yodes, the ones that type, not everybody knows Kabbalah. By the way, many of the typists are women. Yeah, so I do use women which know how to read a Ksav Yad. So they look at the Ksav Yad and the typing. So without understanding, they know this is a Vav and this is a Yud and this is an Endanun. But sometimes in the Ksav Yad it's very motzui, a Vav and a Yud, or a Beis and a Dalid, or there are many Oisias, which if you really don't understand what it's all about, it's impossible not to make mistakes. There's always mistakes. So we went through an inspection of checking everything and making sure everything is correct and everything is in the right place. And then after it was all organized, we had to be made files, because the Mechaber, when he wrote in one notebook, he was able to write. It was Parshas, for an example, if it was Parshas Vayetze, so he wrote about Parshas Vayetze. But then all of a sudden he had a thought of something of last week's Parsha. He reminded himself, he added a piece of the Parsha before. And afterwards he reminded himself of 2 weeks ago, he also had something else he had to add. So in one notebook, there can be scattered from many Parshas. And there are some notebooks which are one parsha from the beginning to the end, and there are some notebooks which are the pieces and hashlomas. And anyways, we had to organize. Not when we were finishing working on Bereshis. So, now we found something in notebook 140 that really belongs to the Bereshis. Now we have to redo Bereshis. So before we began, it took us a year's time just to get organized, right? A year's time, just to get organized. Take everything, putting everything in the right place, and know that we have everything on Bereshis, everything on Noach, everything on Lech Lecha, until Chamisha Chumshe Torah, everything. We start working on the Parsha, and we have a full picture, what do we have on this Parsha. After we have everything on the Parsha, then started another issue, that there were many places where the Mechaber wrote the same thing twice. Something is wrote in the earlier years on a certain level. In later years, he wrote the exact same thing, with much more depth. As we were able to see his steigen, how he's moving on in life from year to year. He was going on a higher level. You see, according to the dates. So he took the same concept which he wrote years before, and in the later years, he wrote it on a much deeper level, the same concept, but it was built on a much deeper, broader level. So it doesn't make sense to take the same thing and rewrite it twice or 3 times in different variations, different shariot. So we took whatever he wrote, that there shouldn't be duplicates in the Sefer. The Sefer is tried our best, b'siyata d'shmaya, that the Sefer should be very mesuda. It's we'll masada everything according to the Seder HaParshias, according to the Seder, the Hapsukim, according to the Seder of his Rayonis. For an example, he wrote Ramozim. He was able to write a normal Ramozim is 50, 60 Ramozim on a pasuk. That's a normal pasuk. So when he wrote his Ramozim, he wrote, for an example, he wrote for the first 10, he wrote Ramozim for the Shloishes Ramidis. Then he went over Ramozim for Yichud Hashemis. Then he went over to Shloishes Ramidis Shel Rachmim. And then he reminded himself, no, he has another remez which really belongs to the first. But he's advanced. So the authors the orchim which were writing had to organize everything, putting everything in the right place according to the mahalach hamachshava, which he was now talking about a certain concept. Whatever has to do with that concept, it should be unified. It should be everything in the right place. Otherwise, it's confusing. You jump back and forth, and then we had to number it because the Mechaber wrote on one line. He wrote numbers and numbers and numbers and numbers and numbers, and it's very, very confusing. Where does it begin? Where does it end? And had to be everything was numbered, and Mesuda, whoever's going to look into the Sefer is going to see it's very planned. It's very set up. Every parsha is also divided into 3 parts. The first part is Pshat and Drush, and the second part of the parsha is Remez, and the third part is Soid. So it's not 100% because many times it's into whatever, it's one's connected into the other, and he brought we couldn't separate them. So many times you have in Chelik HaPshat there's already Ramazim, and then there's already Chelik HaSoid. But in general we tried to set it up that in a way that it should be divided into 3 different parts. I want to be Messiah. Not that I'm ready to answer. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. But I think the rest of the project is, of course, I have to do my chelik. But the one which is really standing behind this is you, grandchildren. You are the ones which are really making tchias hamesim. You are being machaya the ruach of the tzaddik, like we said last week in the parsha, Vatachi ruach Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu became alive when he saw that Yosef is alive. He saw Yosef is alive. He himself became alive. Your grandfather, the Kol Dovid, is waiting for Tchias Hamesim. Mitzvah Hashem, it's soon going to be Mekuyim Beguf. But meanwhile, our tafkid is to be Mekayim the Tchias Hamesim Beruach and Benefesh and Beneshama, and that's in our hands. That's something which we can do, and Hashem should help. We should all be zoiche for siyata d'shmaya, in good health, and be zoiche to be malbitz Torah, to bring out his this svarim, whatever he wrote. I can't tell you an exact number. I know the family doesn't want it to be too big, and I'm telling you, it is a big project. I don't know if it's going to be 9 volumes or 10 volumes, but it won't be less, that's for sure. It may be even more, maybe even 11. But we're talking about a very, very, very big project. And something with the tzaddik, which was moisa nefesh. He did everything in his life in order that the sefer should be b'shleimus. It's the tafkid of grandchildren, which you are brokara davur. You are the grandchildren. You are his bimkoim. You are instead of him. He's begging you from Gan Eden, help give out the svarim. They should come out b'shleimus, b'tachlis hashleimus, and the Eibusher should help. You should all be zoiche for siyata d'shmaya, to be malad shlichus, and we should be zoiche to tchias hamesim and the gula shleima b'mheir b'meinu amen.
Mizmar Dovid Hashem roi 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 lo yachzor min hasdasha Tzaini Amayanuchas Inaleni O Nafashi Yeshavev Yanechayni Maglei Tzadak Leman Shemon Oyekam Ki Elei gates of us, Loira, Kiata, Imati, Shiftecha, Mishantecha, Heyma, Irachamuni, Taroch, Lefanai, Shulchan Egetzoroi, Tishantom Hashemen, Kaisi Revaya Achtom Vachasad Yirtefunika Yemechaya Meshavati Meves Hashem Le'arach Yamim Ya 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 la 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 ya 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 ah ya ya la 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 ah tov mochasan yirfunika Shalti